The previous comparison that we did involved entry-level ADVs. So we are now taking the stake higher and moving towards the grown-ups. Introducing the middleweight boys, the Benelli TRK 502 and the Honda CB500X. The biggest difference between these two is the substantial price gap of over 2 lakh rupees, and hence you would expect there to be a stark difference between these two motorcycles. But is there? Well, that's what we are going to find out in this review. But hey, before going ahead, if you still haven't, please subscribe to our Express Drives official YouTube channel and also click that little bell so that some interesting automotive content can land up right on your phone. Now starting off with the design of both these motorcycles, first the Benelli TRK 502. Well, possibly the biggest highlight of this motorcycle is the fact that it looks big, it's burly, it has an imposing stance. Well, on the other hand, talking of the Honda, well, I'm not quite sure what I'm looking at. Is it a 250cc motorcycle maybe? Because it looks quite regular to me.
Excuse me, who are you calling a 250cc motorcycle? Yeah, right. I don't think so. I think it's a strong looking middleweight ADV, and that's what it is. It doesn't need to be too large, and the compact design I think works better for something like this. Another plus point for the CB500X is that it's 38 kilograms lighter than the TRK. The benefits of that are clearly evident in the way it rides. Moreover, the fit and finish and the build quality on the Honda is top-notch, very evidently better than the Benelli. And it was just yesterday when you told me that the headlamp illumination on the CB is much better than the TRK.
Well, I completely agree to this fact that the Benelli here doesn't look as premium as the Honda, but look at it this way. If you have 5 lakh rupees budget and you can't go for bikes like Ducati Multistrada or maybe a BMW 1250 GS or maybe a Triumph Tiger, well, at least you can buy a motorcycle that at least looks like one.
I think that sounds a bit of an overcompensation to me, but moving on.
Compared to the Honda, the Benelli clearly has some visible areas of improvement. For example, the exposed turn indicator wires at the rear look quite shabby, and even the position of the winkers looks like an afterthought. Moreover, the front beak of the TRK is quite flimsy and seems to be made of cheap plastic.
Both these bikes miss out on an engine bash plate, and it is something that most of the buyers in this segment would surely wish for while going off-road.
So before we get on to ride both these motorcycles, first let's hear how both of these sound. First, the Benelli TRK 502.
Moving on to the CB. I reckon lower RPMs the TRK takes it.
Yeah, this one sounds similar to an inline 4, so you will be happy doing the rides on this one.
However, on full chat, I reckon I'm not a fan of either of the motorcycles when it comes to the exhaust note. But then yeah, as you said, it does sound like a big bike, and this one not so much. So
you tell us in the comments which bike according to you sounds better. Now moving on to engine specs, the Benelli TRK 502 is powered by a 500cc parallel twin liquid cooled engine that is good for producing 47.5 HP of power along with 46 Newton meters of torque.
In these terms, the CB500 produces a little less torque than the TRK, which is about 3 Newton meters. But then how the two motorcycles perform, how it feels like when you throw open the throttle, I think the CB500 feels a lot more sprightly than the TRK. And a very big reason behind that is that it's quite substantially heavier than the CB500X.
Which is why the Honda also promises greater top speed, close to 180 kilometers an hour. But the true charm of the motorcycle lies in the mid of the rev range, thanks to which the CB500 is effortless in city traffic while also not asking for too many downshifts.
On the other hand, the top speed of the Benelli is quite lower at around 160 km an hour. The low and mid-range is quite strong, that facilitates quick overtakes in the city, but the engine doesn't feel as lively as the Honda and takes its own sweet time to build the rev. Now speaking of the engine refinement of both these motorcycles, well, the Benelli TRK 502 feels a lot more refined, but only in the lower revs. And once you start crossing the 4,500 RPM mark, you'll clearly feel the buzz on the handlebar and the foot pegs. The Honda, on the other hand, feels a lot more refined motorcycle compared to the TRK 502, and even at 6,500 RPM, there is no buzz, absolutely no buzz on the handlebar or the foot pegs.
Yep, absolutely agree with you there. This is, in a true Honda fashion, a very refined motorcycle. You'd perhaps feel some buzz, but that only happens on full chat, perhaps when you're redlining it. Now, I'd also would want to mention the gearbox and how smooth it is to shift gears. And I don't think we've got complaints with either of the motorcycles. The pretty smooth gearbox. However, I think the clutch lever, the pull is very light on this one. What about that one?
So yeah, the Benelli here has a comparatively heavier clutch, and for this reason, riding this bike in the city can be a bit of a hassle at times. As much as we were enjoying the ride, it was a scorching hot day, so we went looking for a cafe. So now we are taking a break from riding to basically talk about riding. So it's 43 degrees out there, and we've been gunning our machines at full throttle for the last 1 hour or so, but our machines have been dealing with this summer heat a lot better than us, very, very clearly.
Yeah.
Don't you think so?
This is the third drink, I'll be honest, and it had to happen. Well, so we're talking about riding, so let's talk about straight line speeds. And so India is going to have highways which will have 120 kilometers an hour as the speed limit, and that's a good thing for us. We can do 120 kilometers now on machines like these. And speaking of which, the CB500X holds speeds like that very comfortably. It's after, I would say, 120 that some buzz you can feel on the handlebars, right? But the TRK a little bit less.
Absolutely. I think the cruising speed and the sweet spot of the Benelli TRK 502 is just keep the engine at 5,000 RPM at 100 kilometers an hour, and you can do that speed all day long, relentlessly. Even the straight line stability at triple digit speeds, it feels a lot planted compared to the CB500X. So easily at 130, even at 140, this one feels more planted and more stable compared to the Honda.
CB feels like it starts to weave a little bit at high speeds, but the TRK remains very planted. I guess the weight has something to do with it.
Absolutely.
It must, but then the CB handles better than that. So
not every time being overweight is a problem.
yeah, there are plus points.
Now talking of the seat height of both these motorcycles, the Benelli TRK 502 comes with a seat height of 800 millimeters. And that actually makes it very, very accessible and very, very manageable. As you can see, my height for reference is 5 feet 8 inches, and my feet are placed not exactly flat on the ground, but I'm not having any problems either. So even if you are someone whose height is supposedly like 5 feet 5 or 5 feet 6 inches, then also you won't be having any troubles managing this motorcycle in city traffic. And all thanks to this low seat height of 800 millimeters, the bike actually feels a lot manageable despite having a high curb weight of 235 kilograms. Now talking of the seating comfort, this is an extremely comfortable motorcycle. Both the rider and the pillion seat offer a high level of comfort. Even the pillion seat of this motorcycle is wider and more well padded than the rider seat on that one. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I'm guessing I don't have many positives here. Like you mentioned that it'll be okay for someone like who's 5.5, 5.6 feet tall. Well, I am 5 feet 5 and the seat height on this one is above 830 mm. So I barely managed to get my toes on the ground. But it's alright. I mean, I do have some problems pulling it in and out of parking. But then for stopping or setting off, I can always just shift my weight to one side, get one foot planted on the ground. So I can manage it even with this height. Yeah, this single piece seat, not so comfortable, not as much as the TRK at least. I haven't been a pillion on this motorcycle, but I'm guessing I would be happier being a pillion on that bike than this.
Let's go for a ride then on this one.
Yeah, I don't like being a pillion. I don't.
Okay, jokes apart, now talking of the riding position of both these motorcycles, first the TRK 502. As you can see, the bike gets a wide handlebar, and the foot pegs on this one are quite forward set, and all these things combined together to offer you a comfortable riding position. You sit quite upright on this motorcycle, and add to that the fact that this bike gets a very comfortable seat, and all these things come together and make this an extremely comfortable mile muncher. What about the CB?
I think I'm not a big fan of the seating position on the TRK. I find it slightly awkward, and especially that makes it a little bit difficult to off-road as well, because if you stand on the foot pegs, on those foot pegs, the way you're standing on it, because the fuel tank design is so wide, it's kind of awkward standing on the foot pegs, so it makes off-roading much worse on it. But then I think we have established that it is strictly a touring motorcycle. On the other hand, the CB500X can handle mild off-roading because, well, it gets quite a wide handlebar, and the foot pegs are slightly rear set compared to the TRK, which means I believe that it gives me better control. Even on corners, I feel more confident leaning it into those corners. And yeah, like I said, it can take mild off-roading, which the TRK can't.
By the way, just to add here, if you want to go off-roading on the TRK, well, Benelli offers an off-road variant of the TRK 502. It's called the 502X, and it gets multiple off-road inspired bits like spoke wheels, upswept exhaust, different knobby tires, and much more. And this off-road variant is something that Honda doesn't offer with the CB500X.
Because it can do mild off-roading even without that additional variant.
The Benelli, despite its high curb weight, feels quite manageable in city traffic. All that weight seems to vanish once you are on the go, and it is only while maneuvering the bike in your parking lot when you actually wish for a gym membership. Moreover, the TRK is a quite neutral handler, and hence going flat out on it around corners doesn't come across as a very good idea. Another reason why we say this is because the grip from the tires is just satisfactory and not great or very confidence inspiring.
While we use the word manageable for the TRK, one for Honda would have to be enjoyable. Quite simply, the sportier of the two, the CB500X is quick to flick from side to side and would prove to be a fun ride if your tour includes mountain twisties. The ride dynamics definitely instill confidence to lean into corners.
Speaking of braking, the setup on the TRK does a decent job of bringing this behemoth to a halt, but we wished for some more feedback and bite.
Braking on the CB, although not super bitey, is fair for a motorcycle its size and power, and the ABS is not very intrusive either. Of the two, the CB's suspension is more plush, however the seat is comparatively narrow and firm. Both the bikes get a dual channel ABS as standard, but the one on the 502 is switchable.
Both the motorcycles offer a similar feature package with fully digital instrument clusters, but the switchgear on the TRK is backlit, which the CB misses out on. But then, it comes with an emergency stop signal, or simply ESS, so when the system senses sudden braking, all four indicators blink.
The Benelli comes with a 20-litre fuel tank, while the CB has a smaller appetite of 17.7 litres. But the CB has a slightly better fuel efficiency, which means that in the real world, both these ATVs should give you a range of about 470 kilometers on one full top-up.
So at this point, I think we've got to sum it up, and I've got to bring up what we started out with again. So a stark price difference of rupees 2 lakh. I think it's very evident why is that so, why is this more expensive. When you think of just the machines and keep the price aside for a minute, I think the CB500X is clearly the better machine of these two with better ride dynamics. This is a better engine, more refined, and it offers a more sporty character than the TRK. But there is a slight problem for the 500X, and it's called the Kawasaki Versailles 650. So if you spend just a little bit more than the CB500X, which is priced at about 6.8 lakh, you could bring home a Versailles 650, which will offer more power, which is about 20 brake horsepower more, and it is more capable when it comes to off-roading as well. But bringing the focus back onto these two though, what do you have to say about the TRK?
Well, completely agree to the facts that you mentioned about the Honda CB500X, but it also needs to be noted that at a much lesser price, the Benelli TRK 502 can do most of the things that your Honda can also do. And it isn't a bad bet at all considering the price segment that it falls in. It's extremely comfortable, in fact way more comfortable than the Honda CB500X. It looks big, it looks imposing, something that many of us Indians want our machines to be. So, if you're someone who is chasing big bike feels and a high level of comfort, then well, the Benelli TRK 502 is one option that you can look out for. On the other hand, if you want a more versatile motorcycle and don't mind paying that extra 2 lakh rupees, well in that case, the CB500X is clearly the bet to go for. Until next time, thank you so much for watching.
Meet Pradeep Shah, the senior correspondent, talking about...
Like, share, subscribe बोल दूँ?
Hi.
वापस. Yay!